Close your eyes and imagine a reed flute, pierced at its heart and separated from its reed bed. When it sings, it mourns its exile from its source. That cry echoes across time and space. It is the cry of your own soul, longing to return home. Rumi opens his Masnavi with this metaphor. The human soul, cast from unity into form, yearning to be reunited with its origin. This journey is not metaphor, it is the path of transformation. Today, we explore the journey of the soul in the Masnavi, the stages of transformation from the ego-driven self to awakening and divine union. Welcome to the unfolding journey, where ancient poetry meets spiritual insight and inner transformation. If you're drawn to mystical teachings, soul reflections, and timeless wisdom, from Rumi, Taoist sages, or contemplative traditions, you've found your space. Let's enter this mystical path together. Rumi begins with the reed flute story. What is that in the reed that cries to your soul? It is the cry of exile. It was cut from its reed bed. Kantara. This is the first stage. Nafs al-amara, the ego-bound self, lost in worldly pursuits, never satisfied, even at the height of fame or wealth. In this state, the soul feels a restless ache, a yearning for home, for reunion. This longing is sacred. It awakens the spiritual pursuit. At some point, the soul begins to reflect. It stops projecting blame outward and turns inward. This transformation marks the emergence of nafs al-lawama, the self-accusing soul. The soul begins to mourn its own ignorance, to repent, to call itself back from distractions. This is a painful but necessary phase. Truth often arrives as a self-inquiry. Once the ego begins to dissolve, the soul becomes receptive to guidance and inspiration. Nafs al-mulhama, the inspired soul. Here the soul enters the realm of dreams, synchronicities, spiritual teachings, and signs. It hears the musical tone within, the melody of its longing, and seeks nourishment in stories, poetry, symbolic parables. The Masnavi itself becomes such food. Through sustained inner work, remembrance, and surrender, the soul reaches nafs al-mumena, the soul at peace. At this level, the inner turmoil subsides, heart and mind rest in trust. Rumi describes that the veil is lifting. The flute's music still echoes, but the soul no longer resists. It rests in presence and quiet certainty. In the enlivened union with the divine, the soul enters nafs al-raya and al-maraya, the pleasing and pleased soul. Finally, one may transcend into nafs afaya, the pure soul beyond separation. This final stage is not ego-based devotion, it is unity itself. The veil drops fully. The flute melts back into the bed, into the reed's origin. Rumi writes that death is no loss, it is reunion. The Masnavi doesn't simply define stages, it enacts them through stories. Like the tale of the wounded girl whose pain was misdiagnosed. Only when the healer heard her hidden grief did she heal. Other tales show how one's ego, like a creeping king, must be tamed for spiritual realization. These stories guide the soul downward into humility, inward into self-knowledge, upward into surrender. A recurring teaching in the Masnavi is Kam al-Nafs, the annihilation of the self. Rumi says, self-annihilation is not self-destruction, but surrendering to divine consciousness. Only by dying to the false self can the lover arise, the lover unified with the beloved. Love is the fundamental force in this spiritual drama. It transforms suffering into vision. The nightingale and the rose approach, the reed's lament, the believer's constant beckoning. Love both draws the soul and releases the soul. Rumi teaches that suffering is not punishment, but invitation. It cracks the self open, letting the light in. In the Masnavi stories, trials transform the stuck self into something fluid and receptive. Rumi's own relationship with Shams is mirrored in Masnavi. A guide catalyzes transformation. The spiritual teacher helps the seeker see the pattern behind the pain, the grace beneath the grief. Rumi warns that without guidance, the journey can become ego-driven mythology, beautiful but empty. The ultimate teaching in the Masnavi is Tawd, the oneness of everything. The stages end, but union continues. Soul becomes no soul. Lover merges in beloved. Flame returns to flame. All veils dissolve. Separation becomes memory. Everything is beloved. Though written in medieval Persia, the Masnavi's path is timeless. Every seeker who asks, "Who am I beyond these thoughts?" is on this path. Every heart that feels restless with success, pleasure, or ambition echoes the reed's cry. The stages invite us to travel inward, through self-honesty, grief, surrender, to a place of calm, ecstasy, and peace. In our lives, we often linger too long in stage one. chasing outward approval, seeking safety in forms. The Masnavi teaches us, spiritual growth requires transformation from within, letting the stage shift, step by step, toward union. And it reassures, at each stage, divine love accompanies the soul, not waiting until the end. Rumi's Masnavi is not a map. It is the mapmaker, revealing the soul's trajectory through lived experience, parable, melody, and moment. The stages, from ego to search, to inspiration, to surrender, to unity, are not theoretical steps to climb. They are lived realities to awaken into, moment by moment. Let the flute cry. Then let the reed remember. Then let the flute melt back into the reed bed. If this journey through the Masnavi spoke to something within you, step further with us on the unfolding journey. Subscribe for weekly explorations of mystical texts, spiritual wisdom, and lived philosophy. Like this video if it nurtured your soul's longing. Share it with a fellow traveler on the path. And tap the bell to stay in tune with upcoming reflections and teachings. Until next time, may your longing lead you home, and may every stage bring you closer to union.